Italy, a land renowned for its art, its cuisine, and its breathtaking landscapes. But beneath this idyllic surface lies a darker history, a legacy woven into the fabric of the nation. This is the story of the Italian mafias, clandestine organizations that have cast a long shadow over the country, leaving an enduring mark on its history, its culture, and its people. To truly understand Italy, one must grapple with the complex and often unsettling reality of these groups. Their influence seeps into every corner of society, from the bustling streets of Palermo to the tranquil countryside of Calabria. The mafias are not monolithic entities, they are a collection of distinct organizations, each with its own origins, structure, and sphere of influence. The most infamous, Cosa Nostra, evokes images of Sicily, a land where honor and vendetta intertwine. Venturing north, we encounter the Camorra, a network of clans that has sunk its teeth into the heart of Naples. And then there is the Ndrangheta, a relatively unknown but formidable force that has quietly risen to become a global player in the criminal underworld. These organizations are more than just criminal enterprises. They are deeply embedded in the social fabric of Italy, wielding influence that extends far beyond the traditional realms of organized crime. To comprehend their impact, we must delve into their history, their methods, and their enduring grip on the Italian psyche. The mafias thrive on a potent cocktail of fear and power, their influence seeping into the very fabric of Italian life. Through intimidation, violence, and corruption, they have managed to infiltrate institutions, manipulate economies, and silence dissent. Their tentacles reach into businesses, politics, and even the judicial system, creating a climate of fear that can be difficult to escape. For decades, the specter of violence has hung heavy over communities across Italy. Those who dare to cross the mafias, whether rival gangs or ordinary citizens, often face swift and brutal retribution. The chilling message is clear: silence ensures survival. This culture of fear has permeated society, making witnesses hesitant to come forward and investigations notoriously difficult. But the mafia's power extends beyond brute force. They have become adept at infiltrating legitimate businesses, using their ill-gotten gains to corrupt officials and manipulate markets. Construction, waste management, and even renewable energy have become attractive ventures, offering opportunities for money laundering and influence peddling. This economic clout gives them a stranglehold on communities, making it difficult for legitimate businesses to compete and further entrenching their power. Their influence extends to the very heart of the Italian state, with politicians and officials often caught in their web of corruption. Bribery, extortion, and blackmail become tools to secure contracts, influence policy, and ensure impunity. This erosion of trust in institutions has a corrosive effect on society, breeding cynicism and apathy. To combat the mafias effectively, it is crucial to understand their individual structures, histories, and modus operandi. While they share a common thread of criminality, each organization has its own distinct characteristics, its own internal dynamics, and its own particular brand of ruthlessness. By dissecting these groups, we can begin to unravel their complex web of influence and identify their vulnerabilities. Our journey begins in the sun-drenched island of Sicily, the birthplace of the Cosa Nostra. Here, amidst the rolling hills and ancient olive groves, a potent mix of poverty, lawlessness, and a thirst for power gave rise to this infamous organization. We will delve into its hierarchical structure, its intricate codes of honor, and its bloody reign of terror that left an indelible mark on the Italian psyche. From Sicily, we travel north to the chaotic energy of Naples, home to the Camorra. Unlike the rigid hierarchy of the Cosa Nostra, the Camorra operates as a loose network of clans, often vying for control of territory and resources. This fragmented structure makes them both resilient and unpredictable, their influence felt in the city's underworld and its legitimate businesses alike. Finally, we venture into the rugged mountains of Calabria, where the Ndrangheta, the silent giant of the Italian mafias, has taken root. Shrouded in secrecy and bound by blood ties, this organization has quietly amassed immense wealth and power, becoming a major player in the global drug trade. We will explore their origins, their methods, and their relentless pursuit of profit, which has earned them a fearsome reputation both in Italy and abroad. To understand the rise of the Italian mafia, we must first journey back to 19th century Sicily, an island grappling with a tumultuous past and a precarious present. Emerging from centuries of foreign rule, Sicily found itself on the cusp of a new era, yet shackled by the weight of its history. The island was a mosaic of vast estates owned by absentee landlords and an impoverished peasantry struggling to eke out a living from the land. This stark economic disparity created a breeding ground for resentment, lawlessness, and a yearning for a different order. The unification of Italy in 1861 brought with it the promise of progress and stability, but for Sicily it was a double-edged sword. The newly formed Italian state, eager to assert its authority, imposed a centralized system of governance that often felt alien and insensitive to the island's unique social fabric. Taxation policies favored the mainland, further burdening the Sicilian economy and fueling resentment towards the distant government in Rome. In this climate of uncertainty and discontent, the seeds of organized crime were sown. The island's rugged terrain, with its remote villages and dense forests, provided ample hiding places for bandits and outlaws who operated with impunity. These men, often driven by poverty or a desire for revenge, became folk heroes to some, their exploits romanticized in local songs and legends. As the authority of the state faltered in the Sicilian countryside, a power vacuum emerged, creating an opportunity for those willing to exploit it. Into this void stepped the proto-mafias, groups of armed men who offered their services as enforcers, mediators, and protectors. Section 2. The Seeds of Discontent, a history of Sicilian unrest. Sicily's history is a tapestry woven with threads of conquest, rebellion, and foreign domination. Over the centuries, the island had been ruled by a succession of empires, each leaving its mark on the land and its people. The Greeks, the Romans, the Arabs, the Normans, the Spanish, all left their imprint on Sicily's culture, language, and psyche. This long legacy of foreign rule fostered a deep-seated distrust of authority and a sense of Sicilian exceptionalism that would shape the island's destiny. The 19th century saw a surge of nationalist sentiment sweep across Europe, and Sicily was no exception. The island had long chafed under the yoke of Bourbon rule, and secret societies like the Carbonari plotted to overthrow the monarchy and establish an independent Sicilian republic. Uprisings erupted in 1820 and 1848, fueled by a desire for self-determination and an end to oppression. While these rebellions were ultimately crushed, they left an indelible mark on the Sicilian psyche. They reinforced a sense of grievance, a belief that the island had been denied its rightful place in the world. This simmering resentment created fertile ground for the emergence of organizations that promised to protect Sicilian interests, even if it meant operating outside the law. The unification of Italy in 1861, while hailed as a triumph for Italian nationalism, did little to quell the unrest in Sicily. The island's hopes for autonomy were dashed, and the new Italian state, dominated by northerners, was viewed with suspicion and resentment. This sense of alienation, coupled with the island's entrenched social problems, created a climate ripe for the rise of the mafia. Section 3. Protectors or Predators, the birth of the mafia myth. The early years of the mafia are shrouded in myth and legend, making it difficult to separate fact from fiction. What is clear is that these groups emerged as a response to the specific conditions of 19th century Sicily, a society grappling with poverty, lawlessness, and a lack of trust in traditional institutions. The mafia, in its early incarnations, positioned itself as a protector of the people, a defender of Sicilian interests against a hostile outside world. This narrative, carefully cultivated by the mafiosi themselves, played on the island's history of foreign domination and its deep-seated distrust of authority. The mafia presented itself as a necessary evil, a force that restored order where the state had failed. They mediated disputes, enforced contracts, and protected their communities from bandits and criminals, all for a price, of course. This image of the mafia as a benevolent protector, while largely a fabrication, resonated with a segment of the Sicilian population. In a society where justice was often slow, corrupt, or non-existent, the mafia offered a swift and brutal form of retribution. They became, in the eyes of some, a necessary evil, a brutal but effective force in a world where the lines between right and wrong were often blurred. This mythologizing of the mafia, fueled by popular culture and romanticized accounts of their exploits, helped to legitimize their presence in Sicilian society. They were no longer mere criminals but men of honor, bound by a strict code of conduct, protectors of the weak, and dispensers of their own brand of justice. This carefully constructed image would serve them well in the years to come, allowing them to infiltrate the very fabric of Sicilian life and exert their influence over every aspect of society. Section 4. The Gabellotto system, fueling corruption and control. Central to the mafia's rise to power was their exploitation of the Gabellotto system, a feudal land tenure arrangement that dominated Sicily's agricultural economy. Under this system, absentee landlords, often residing in the comfort of mainland Italy, entrusted the management of their vast estates to local intermediaries known as gabellotti. These men, wielding considerable power and influence, acted as middlemen, collecting rents from peasant farmers and forwarding a portion to the landowners. The gabellotto system was rife with corruption, creating opportunities for exploitation at every level. Gabellotti, often allied with local strongmen and mafia factions, inflated rents, skimmed profits, and terrorized peasants who dared to complain. The mafia, recognizing the potential for profit and control, infiltrated this system, using violence and intimidation to secure lucrative gabellotto contracts for themselves or their allies. This control over land, the lifeblood of the Sicilian economy, gave the mafia immense power. They dictated terms to peasants, controlled access to water and resources, and manipulated agricultural markets for their benefit. Those who resisted faced retribution, their crops destroyed, their livelihoods ruined, their families threatened. The gabellotto system, while officially abolished in the early 20th century, left a lasting legacy on Sicily. It entrenched a culture of corruption, eroded trust in institutions, and created a climate of fear that benefited the mafia. The lines between legitimate business, political influence, and criminal activity blurred as the mafia consolidated its grip on the island's economy and political life. The rise of Cosa Nostra, from rural roots to urban power. As Sicily entered the 20th century, the mafia, no longer content with operating in the shadows of the countryside, set its sights on the burgeoning cities. Palermo, with its bustling port and growing population, became a focal point for this expansion. The influx of people, money, and opportunities provided fertile ground for the mafia to extend its reach into new and lucrative criminal enterprises. The collapse of the gabellotto system, while weakening the traditional power base of the landed elite, created a void that the mafia was quick to fill. They moved into the cities, bringing with them their networks of patronage, their methods of intimidation, and their insatiable appetite for power. The urban landscape, with its crowded neighborhoods, its corrupt officials, and its bustling underworld, provided ample opportunities for extortion, racketeering, and violence. The mafia's rise in the cities was aided by the political turmoil that gripped Italy in the early 20th century. The rise of fascism, with its emphasis on order and its suppression of dissent, created a climate of fear and uncertainty that the mafia exploited to its advantage. They infiltrated labor unions, controlled construction contracts, and muscled their way into the city's burgeoning black markets. As Cosa Nostra tightened its grip on Palermo, it began to resemble a parallel government dispensing its own brand of justice, controlling access to resources and influencing political outcomes. They became the city's power brokers, feared and respected in equal measure, their influence felt in every corner of society. Omertà, the code of silence and the mafia's shield. Central to the mafia's grip on power was Omertà, a code of silence that permeated Sicilian society and served as an impenetrable shield against law enforcement. Omertà, rooted in a deep-seated mistrust of authority and a fierce sense of loyalty to one's family and clan, forbade any form of cooperation with the police or the courts. To break Omertà was to invite swift and often brutal retribution, not only upon oneself, but also upon one's family and loved ones. The mafia's reach was long and its memory unforgiving. Witnesses were intimidated, evidence disappeared, and judges and prosecutors faced threats and violence. The code of silence ensured that the mafia's inner workings remained hidden from view, its crimes rarely brought to justice. Omertà was not merely a product of fear, however, it was also deeply intertwined with Sicilian notions of honor and masculinity. To speak out against the mafia was seen as a betrayal of one's community, a sign of weakness and cowardice. Men in particular were expected to handle their own affairs, to seek justice within the confines of the family or the clan, not through the channels of a corrupt and distant state. This code of silence created a climate of impunity that allowed the mafia to operate with relative freedom. It stifled investigations, protected criminals, and ensured that those who dared to challenge the mafia's authority did so at their own peril. Omertà became a self-perpetuating cycle, breeding fear, mistrust, and a culture of silence that benefited the mafia and eroded the very fabric of Sicilian society. The tentacles of influence, politics, business, and the church. As Cosa Nostra consolidated its power, it weaved its tentacles into every aspect of Sicilian life. Politics, business, and even the church were not immune to its corrupting influence. Politicians eager for votes and campaign contributions turned a blind eye to the mafia's activities, or worse, actively collaborated with them. Businesses, both large and small, were forced to pay pizzo, a protection racket that lined the pockets of Cosa Nostra and instilled fear in those who refused. Even the church, a powerful force in Sicilian society, was not immune to the mafia's influence. The mafia's intrusion into the sacred realm further eroded the moral fabric of society and fueled a sense of cynicism and despair. Section 4, Totorina and the Years of Lead, Terror as a Tool of Control. The 1980s and early 1990s witnessed a reign of terror in Sicily, orchestrated by Salvatore Totorina, a ruthless mafia boss known for his brutality. Rina believed in ruling through fear and intimidation, targeting not only rival gangs but also law enforcement, politicians, and anyone who dared to challenge his authority. Under Rina's leadership, Cosa Nostra waged a bloody war against the Italian state, carrying out a series of high-profile bombings and assassinations. The bombing of the Carpacci Highway in 1992, which killed anti-mafia magistrate Giovanni Falcone, his wife and 3 bodyguards, and the subsequent bombing in Palermo that killed another prominent magistrate, Paolo Borsellino, marked a turning point in Italy's fight against the mafia. The sheer brutality of these attacks galvanized public opinion and forced the Italian government to take decisive action against Cosa Nostra. Section 1, The Serpent of Naples, An Introduction to the Camorra. While Sicily might hold the infamous title of the mafia's birthplace, the sprawling, chaotic city of Naples plays host to its own formidable criminal enterprise, the Camorra. Unlike its Sicilian counterpart, Cosa Nostra, with its rigid hierarchy and romanticized codes of honor, the Camorra operates as a sprawling network of clans, often vying for control of territory, resources, and influence within the city's underbelly. This fragmented structure, while seemingly chaotic, has proven to be a source of resilience, allowing the Camorra to weather storms that would cripple more centralized organizations. Beneath its surface, beauty lies a darker reality, one shaped by poverty, corruption, and the pervasive influence of the Camorra. The organization's roots snake deep into the city's fabric, entwined with its history, its economy, and the daily lives of its citizens. Section 2, A History Steeped in Violence, from Bourbon Rule to Urban Decay. The Camorra's history is inextricably linked to that of Naples itself, a city forged in the crucible of conquest, revolution, and socio-economic upheaval. Emerging from the city's prisons and slums, the early Camorristi, often little more than gangs of thugs, carved out their niches by offering protection, enforcing debts and exploiting the city's desperate underclass. The unification of Italy in 1861 brought with it the promise of progress and prosperity, but for Naples it proved to be a double-edged sword. The Camorra, ever opportunistic, seized upon this instability, infiltrating the city's burgeoning black markets, controlling smuggling operations, and exploiting the growing gap between rich and poor. The Camorra's rise to power was further aided by its ability to exploit the city's political landscape. Section 3. The Art of Survival, Flexibility, Fragmentation, and Feuds. Unlike the more hierarchical structure of Cosa Nostra, the Camorra's strength lies in its adaptability and its decentralized nature. Rather than a single monolithic organization, the Camorra operates as a loose network of clans, each with its own territory, its own leadership structure, and often its own internal rivalries. This fragmentation, while seemingly chaotic, has proven to be a key to the Camorra's survival. Taking down one clan, or even several, does little to weaken the organization as a whole. This adaptability extends to the Camorra's criminal enterprises, moving into new and emerging markets with entrepreneurial zeal. Section 4. A city in its grip, extortion, drugs, and the shadow economy. The Camorra's presence hangs heavy over Naples, its influence seeping into every aspect of the city's life. For many Neapolitans, encountering the Camorra is an unavoidable fact of daily existence, a constant low-grade hum of fear and resignation that colors their interactions and shapes their decisions. Extortion, known as pizzo, remains the Camorra's bread and butter, a steady stream of income extracted from businesses and individuals alike. The drug trade, with its promise of quick profits and high demand, is another cornerstone of the Camorra's operations. The Camorra's control of these networks brings immense wealth into the organization, but at a terrible cost. The organization has infiltrated a wide range of legitimate businesses, using them as fronts for money laundering, extortion, and the exploitation of cheap labor. Section 1. Whispers from the Aspromonte, the Ndrangheta's shadowy rise. While Cosa Nostra and the Camorra have long dominated headlines, a more insidious and arguably more powerful criminal force has been quietly amassing wealth and influence in the southern Italian region of Calabria, the Ndrangheta. The Ndrangheta's origins can be traced back to the rugged Aspromonte mountains of Calabria, a region long plagued by poverty, isolation, and a history of foreign domination. Emerging from the region's bandit culture and its traditions of vendettas and blood feuds, the Ndrangheta's early activities centered around extortion, kidnapping, and the control of local resources. Unlike its more flamboyant counterparts, the Ndrangheta has always operated with a low profile, preferring discretion and strategic alliances over overt displays of violence and power. This understated approach, combined with its deeply rooted family-based structure and its impenetrable code of silence, has allowed the Ndrangheta to amass wealth and influence with a level of impunity that has alarmed law enforcement officials and policymakers across the globe. Section 2. Blood and Bonds, the Impenetrable Fortress of Family. At the heart of the Ndrangheta's strength lies its unique and impenetrable organizational structure, one built not on shifting alliances or hierarchical pyramids of power, but on the unbreakable bonds of blood and family. Each Ndrina is typically headed by a patriarch, a figure of unquestioned authority, who commands the loyalty and obedience of his family members. This family-based structure provides the Ndrangheta with a level of trust and loyalty that is virtually impossible to infiltrate or disrupt. Members are bound by blood ties, shared history, and a deep-seated belief in the sanctity of family. This impenetrable wall of family has proven to be the Ndrangheta's greatest strength, shielding it from the prying eyes of law enforcement. Section 3. From kidnapping to cocaine, the evolution of a criminal empire. The Ndrangheta's journey from a shadowy network of rural extortionists to a global criminal powerhouse is a testament to its adaptability, its ruthlessness, and its ability to exploit emerging opportunities in a rapidly changing world. The 1970s and 80s witnessed a surge in kidnappings for ransom across Italy, and the Ndrangheta seized upon this lucrative new enterprise. This wave of kidnappings provided the Ndrangheta with a much-needed infusion of capital, which they would use to invest in new and even more profitable criminal ventures. The organization's focus shifted to the international drug trade, forging alliances with Colombian cocaine cartels, Moroccan hashish traffickers, and other organized crime groups around the globe. This illicit trade, generating billions of dollars in annual revenue, transformed the Ndrangheta into a financial behemoth, its influence reaching far beyond the confines of the criminal underworld and into the heart of the global economy. Section 4, the Straits of Money, Ndrangheta's global drug trafficking network. The Ndrangheta's rise in the global drug trade is a testament to its strategic brilliance and mastery of logistics. Controlling narcotics flow from producer countries to consumer markets was key to amassing wealth and power. The Ndrangheta established a sophisticated network of smuggling routes, transforming into a global logistical powerhouse. Control of the Strait of Messina provides a choke point for funneling illicit goods. Corrupt port officials and bribes ensure containers of narcotics pass undetected. The Ndrangheta's reach extends far beyond the Mediterranean, with footholds in major ports worldwide. Alliances with local gangs, corrupt officials, and legitimate businesses facilitate smuggling operations. The Ndrangheta supplies an estimated 80% of cocaine consumed in Europe. Its success fuels addiction, violence, and corruption globally, challenging law enforcement. The mafia's influence on Italian culture is undeniable, seeping into art, literature, music, and language. Their image has been romanticized and mythologized, creating a toxic fascination. This stems from historical roots in poverty and lawlessness. The mafia positioned itself as a protector of the people. This narrative resonated in Sicily, Calabria, and Campania. The Code of Silence, Omertà, emphasizes loyalty and honor. It appeals to a romanticized notion of masculinity. The mafioso as a strong, silent figure attracts attention. This fascination has consequences, normalizing criminal behavior. It blurs lines between right and wrong, perpetuating harmful stereotypes. The mafia's grip on the Italian imagination is evident in literature and cinema. They serve as both villains and anti-heroes. Their stories are told through various lenses, from gritty realism to romanticized nostalgia. These portrayals contribute to the complex image of the mafia in Italian culture. Perhaps no other work of fiction has had as profound an impact on the public's perception of the mafia as Mario Puzo's 1969 novel, The Godfather, and Francis Ford Coppola's subsequent film adaptations. The story of the Corleone family, a fictionalized account of a New York City mafia dynasty, captivated audiences worldwide, becoming a cultural phenomenon that spawned sequels, imitations, and countless parodies. The Godfather, both the novel and the films, is a masterpiece of storytelling, a sprawling epic that explores themes of family, loyalty, betrayal, and the corrupting influence of power. The Corleone family, despite their criminal activities, are portrayed with a certain tragic grandeur. Their patriarch, Don Vito Corleone, a figure of both fear and respect, a man who lives by his own code of honor, however flawed it may be. While The Godfather does not shy away from the violence and brutality inherent in the mafia's operations, it also romanticizes certain aspects of the organization, portraying its members as men of tradition, bound by family ties and a strict moral code. This romanticized image, while undoubtedly compelling, has been criticized for glamorizing a criminal lifestyle and for perpetuating harmful stereotypes about Italian Americans. Despite its controversial legacy, The Godfather remains a significant cultural touchstone, a work of art that continues to spark debate and discussion about the nature of power, the allure of the forbidden, and the enduring fascination with the mafia. Its influence on popular culture is undeniable, shaping the way the mafia has been portrayed in countless films, television shows, and books, and contributing to the complex and often contradictory image of the organization in the public imagination. In contrast to the romanticized portrayal of the mafia in the Godfather Roberto Saviano's 2006 non-fiction book Camorra and the subsequent television series of the same name, offer a raw and unflinching look at the brutal reality of the Camorra, the Neapolitan mafia. Saviano, a native of the region, drew on his first-hand experiences and extensive research to create a work of investigative journalism that exposed the Camorra's grip on every aspect of Neapolitan life, from drug trafficking and extortion to waste disposal and the fashion industry. Camorra is not for the faint of heart. It is a bleak and often disturbing portrayal of a criminal organization that operates with impunity, its members driven by greed, ambition, and a willingness to resort to extreme violence to achieve their goals. Saviano's book, written in a stark and unflinching style, reads like a dispatch from the front lines of a war zone. Its pages filled with tales of murder, betrayal, and the corrosive effects of corruption. The television series, which premiered in 2014, picks up where the book left off, delving deeper into the lives of the Camorra's foot soldiers, their families, and their victims. The series, shot on location in Naples' most impoverished neighborhoods, is visually stunning, its gritty realism capturing the city's beauty, its decay, and the pervasive sense of fear that hangs heavy in the air. Camorra, both the book and the television series, have been praised for their realism, their unflinching portrayal of violence, and their willingness to challenge the romanticized image of the mafia. The works have also sparked controversy, with some critics accusing Saviano of exploiting the violence and misery of his hometown for fame and profit. Despite the criticisms, Camorra remains a powerful and important work, a testament to the power of investigative journalism and the importance of shining a light on the darkest corners of society. For decades, the Italian mafia operated with impunity, its grip on power unbreakable. The Code of Silence, Omertà, silenced witnesses and intimidated officials. The 1980s saw a seismic shift in Italy's fight against organized crime. The Maxi trials were landmark proceedings that altered Italy's battle against the mafia. Held in Palermo, they aimed to dismantle Cosa Nostra. Hundreds of alleged mafiosi were tried simultaneously. Years of investigative work led to these trials. Giovanni Falcone's groundbreaking work was central to their success. He used informants, wiretaps, and financial analysis to build cases. Falcone's pursuit of justice made him a hero and a target. The Maxi trials were a watershed moment, symbolizing the state's determination to confront the mafia. At the forefront of Italy's battle against the mafia stood two courageous magistrates, Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino. They dedicated their lives to dismantling the mafia, knowing the risks involved. Falcone revolutionized Italy's approach to fighting organized crime. Borsellino focused on building trust with witnesses and informants. Together, they posed an unprecedented threat to Cosa Nostra's power. Their legacy continues to inspire generations of Italians. Inside the bunker, unprecedented Einblicke in die Mafia hierarchy. The Maxi trials, while groundbreaking in their scale and scope, would not have been possible without a key breakthrough, the testimony of Tommaso Buscetta, a high-ranking Cosa Nostra member who broke the sacred code of Omertà and became a state witness. Buscetta's decision to collaborate with authorities, driven by a mix of personal vendetta and a desire to expose the brutality of the organization he had served for decades, provided invaluable insights into the mafia's inner workings, its hierarchy, its codes of conduct, and its methods of operation. Buscetta's testimony, delivered over months of grueling courtroom proceedings, shattered the myth of the mafia as a loosely organized network of criminal gangs. Instead, he revealed a highly structured and hierarchical organization with a clear chain of command, elaborate initiation rituals, and a rigid code of conduct that governed every aspect of its members' lives. He detailed the organization's involvement in drug trafficking, extortion, and murder, outlining its sophisticated methods of money laundering, its infiltration of legitimate businesses, and its corrupt ties to politicians and law enforcement officials. Buscetta's testimony provided prosecutors with the evidence they needed to secure convictions against hundreds of alleged mafiosi, including some of the organization's most powerful figures. His revelations sent shockwaves through Italian society, confirming long-held suspicions about the mafia's reach and influence, and highlighting the complicity of powerful figures within the government, the business world, and even the Catholic Church. Buscetta's decision to break Omertà, while motivated by a complex mix of personal and ideological factors, marked a turning point in Italy's fight against organized crime. His testimony, while controversial, and not without its critics, provided a crucial window into the mafia's inner sanctum, revealing the organization's vulnerabilities and empowering law enforcement to strike back with unprecedented force. The Maxi trials and the crackdown on the mafia came at a heavy price. Cosa Nostra responded with a brutal campaign of violence, targeting those who testified against them and the officials leading the charge. On May 23, 1992, Giovanni Falcone, his wife, and 3 bodyguards were killed by a car bomb outside Palermo. 2 months later, Paolo Borsellino was killed by another car bomb. The public outcry was immediate and overwhelming. The state launched a massive crackdown on the mafia, arresting thousands and seizing assets. A changing landscape. The mafia's adaptation to the 21st century. The Italian mafia, once synonymous with brutal violence, has undergone a profound transformation. They have evolved their methods, expanded their global reach, and infiltrated new sectors of the economy. Today's mafia is a far cry from the romanticized image of old-school dons. The rise of globalization and technology has created new opportunities and challenges. Traditional boundaries have become porous, facilitating the movement of illicit profits. The mafia has transformed itself into a global threat. They now use more subtle forms of coercion and control. Brutal acts are often a last resort. Discretion is more profitable than brute force. This shift has made the mafia more difficult to combat. Their operations are intertwined with legitimate businesses and complex financial transactions. Confronting this new breed requires a multifaceted approach. Section 2, Beyond Borders, the globalization of organized crime. The Italian mafia, once confined to southern Italy, now has a global presence from the Americas to Asia. Globalization, technology, and weakened borders challenge law enforcement worldwide. Emigration history helped the mafia establish networks abroad. Millions of Italians settled in countries like the US, Canada, and Australia. These communities provided contacts and cultural understanding for the mafia. Globalization and interconnected economies facilitated the mafia's expansion. The mafia exploits global trade for drug trafficking, money laundering, and counterfeit goods. With established networks, the mafia thrives in the global black market. Weakened borders, like in the EU, aid the mafia's cross-border operations. Free movement within the EU eases the transport of drugs, weapons, and humans. The mafia exploits legal system differences, complicating efforts to dismantle its networks. Section 3. The new face of the mafia, from thugs to white-collar criminals. While the traditional image of the mafioso as a swaggering thug, prone to violence and intimidation, might still hold true in some circles, the reality is far more nuanced. The modern mafia, particularly at its highest levels, is increasingly composed of individuals who would not look out of place in a boardroom or a government ministry. They are educated, sophisticated, and well-versed in the intricacies of finance, law, and international business. This new breed of mafioso understands that wielding power in the 21st century requires more than just brute force. It requires intelligence, adaptability, and a keen understanding of how to exploit the complexities of the globalized economy. They are masters of disguise, adept at blending into their surroundings, cultivating relationships with powerful individuals in politics, business, and even law enforcement, and using their influence to further their criminal enterprises. The mafia's infiltration of the legitimate business world is a testament to this new approach. Construction companies, waste disposal firms, real estate agencies, and even renewable energy ventures have all become targets for mafia infiltration, providing a veneer of legitimacy behind which to launder illicit profits, extort competitors, and gain access to government contracts and subsidies. This blurring of the lines between the underworld and the legitimate business world poses a significant challenge for law enforcement. It is often difficult to distinguish between a ruthless businessman operating on the fringes of legality and a sophisticated mafioso using a legitimate business as a front for criminal activity. This new breed of criminal requires a sophisticated response, one that goes beyond traditional law enforcement techniques and delves into the complex world of finance, international trade, and corporate law. Section 4: Infiltrating the global economy, legitimate businesses as fronts for illicit activities. The global financial crisis of 2008 presented the Italian mafia with a unique opportunity. The mafia, with its vast reserves of cash, exploited the crisis to expand its influence. Struggling companies became easy targets for mafia takeovers and money laundering schemes. The mafia infiltrates legitimate businesses through usury or loan sharking. Banks tightened lending standards, leaving businesses unable to secure credit. The mafia offered loans with exorbitant interest rates, using violence to collect debts. Indebted businesses often become fronts for money laundering and other criminal activities. The story of the Italian mafia is not solely one of darkness and despair. Amidst tales of violence and corruption, a different narrative has taken root, one of courage and resilience. Across Italy, a spirit of resistance has emerged, fueled by sacrifices and the determination of ordinary citizens. This resistance takes many forms, from quiet acts of defiance to large-scale social movements. It is a movement fueled by a deep love for Italy and a belief in justice and equality. Journalists play a crucial, often dangerous role in exposing the mafia. Armed with pens and cameras, they challenge the mafia's power and give a voice to its victims. Their work raises public awareness and provides evidence for law enforcement. Covering the mafia means navigating threats and intimidation. Despite the risks, they persist, driven by duty and a belief in justice. Roberto Saviano, author of Camorra, lives under constant police protection. Despite threats, he continues to speak out against organized crime. Across Italy, many journalists risk their lives daily to report on the mafia. In Palermo, Sicily, Addio Pizzo encourages businesses to resist the mafia's pizzo or protection money. Founded in 2004 by young activists, Addio Pizzo symbolizes hope and defiance. Businesses display Addio Pizzo stickers to declare their refusal to pay pizza. This act of defiance shows the mafia's power is not absolute. Despite facing retaliation, Addio Pizzo supports its members. They raise awareness through demonstrations and educational programs. Addio Pizzo has empowered businesses and inspired similar movements across Italy. In the rolling hills of Calabria, where the Ndrangheta has long held sway, Libera, founded by Father Luigi Ciotti, transforms confiscated mafia land into beacons of hope. They repurpose land for social good, creating farms, cooperatives, and educational centers. By doing so, they provide jobs, educational opportunities, and empower local communities. Their citrus groves, once mafia-run, now produce high-quality products under the Libera Terra label. Libera also manages urban properties, transforming them into social centers and housing projects. These projects serve as symbols of hope, showing that a different future is possible. One of the most encouraging developments in Italy's fight against the mafia has been the emergence of a new generation of activists, students, and young professionals who are taking a stand against organized crime. Unburdened by the cynicism and resignation that often characterize previous generations. These young people are bringing fresh energy, innovative ideas, and an unwavering belief in the possibility of change to the anti-mafia movement. This new generation of activists is tech-savvy, media-aware, and adept at using social media platforms to raise awareness, organize protests, and mobilize support for their cause. They are challenging traditional notions of how to combat organized crime, advocating for a more holistic approach that addresses the root causes of the mafia's power, such as poverty, lack of educational opportunities, and the erosion of trust in institutions. Recognizing that education is essential to breaking the cycle of mafia influence, many young activists are focusing their efforts on reaching out to children and teenagers in schools and communities most affected by organized crime. They organize workshops, film screenings, and theatrical performances that educate young people about the dangers of the mafia, the importance of legality, and the power of active citizenship. This focus on youth engagement is based on the belief that change is most effectively achieved by empowering future generations to make different choices. By instilling in young people a sense of hope, a belief in the power of their own voices, and a commitment to creating a more just and equitable society. These activists are planting the seeds for a future where the mafia's influence is a distant memory. The battle against the Italian mafia is far from over. Despite decades of efforts, organized crime continues to cast a long shadow over Italy. However, there is hope, a belief that the tide is turning. The successes of the anti-mafia movement are a testament to collective action and courage. They show that the mafia's grip on power is not absolute.